I have a job to go on to make a key for 89 F350. And if we look at our book, in our AutoSmart book, it does not list a 350, it has a 250 Super Duty. And I'm pretty sure that this will be the same as the 350, but once I get on the site, I'm going to take my scope and scope the locks and make sure that they are the 5-pin locks. And if they are, which again I'm pretty sure they are, we're going to use our tryout keys to make the keys for that vehicle. So I'm going to let you see me actually on the site using the tryout keys, and then once I have a working key, I'm going to come back to the shop and finish a process of making the actual key, so that we can get some pretty good video of what the process is like. But if we look here for the 89 F350, again it shows one key for the ignition and one key for the door. The ignition would be an H51 and the door would be an H50. Shows space and depth chart of F, and then making the first key of 2. So let's go ahead and take a look at that. Okay, on the F, you see it is the 5-cut pin tumbler lock, 5 depths. Again, it shows the keys of the H50 and the H51. This is the H50, this is the H51. So if we look at the page here for suggestions on how to make the first key, first suggestion is to use tryout keys, second is to impression, third is to remove the lock and disassemble it and decode the pin tumblers just like you would in a regular residential pin tumbler lock. But we're going to use the tryout keys, arrow keys, TO1 and TO2. TO2 is for the door, TO1 is for the ignition. Now there is some differences on which keys fit the door. And so I want to point that out to you, that up to 1980, from 1967 to 1980, one key fit both the ignition and the door. And then if it was a vehicle that had a trunk, there was a separate key for the trunk. But in 1981 models, they changed that, and they have one key for the ignition, the primary key, and then a secondary key would be doors and trunk. So you want to pay attention to that, because if you have the earlier one, ignition and door, this would be the TO1 set, the arrow TO1, not TO2. Whereas with this, the TO2 set would fit the doors and the TO1 the ignition. So we're going to go on out to the site and find out which key works the locks. The Ford 5-cut pin tumbler lock can be found in use from models starting in 1965 and going up through 1991. The 5 pins are on the top in the door and they're down in the ignition. For the models 67 through 80, the test key was H51 for the ignition and the door, and H50 for the trunk. From 1981 to 91, the H51 fit the ignition and the H50 the door and trunk. The tryout keys for the primary key are TO1 or the Baxter 81FA. The tryout keys for the secondary key are the arrow TO2 or the Baxter 81FB. Okay, there's a motorhome here. It's on a Ford truck, an Econoline 350 truck. They've lost all the keys to this vehicle. We're going to need door keys, ignition keys. Okay, for the as I said, for the doors and the ignition, we're going to use tryout keys. This is the arrow set of tryout keys, number TO2 for the doors, and the key is cut on both sides. Now on the doors, on this particular Ford lock on the doors, the pins are on the top. So we put the key in and we try it. If it doesn't work, we take it out and we turn it over because there's cuts on both sides. And that way you get two different combinations on each key. Take the key you try out, put it in this other box here, and you just go through them until you find the key that works. Like so. There's only 70 keys in the box, or 140 combinations. You can go through all of them in less than probably 5 minutes. Okay, so after about 50 keys, I found the key that worked. Okay, we're going to use the arrow keys, the two TO1 set of keys for the Ford, again the Ford 5-pin. This is for the ignition. And we do it just like on the door. The only thing to remember is that on this ignition, the pins are on the bottom. Now the key has cuts on two sides, so we have to put it in and try the key. If it doesn't work, give it a good little wiggle, give it a good try, take it out, turn the key over, put it back in, and try it again. Now on your arrow TO1 and TO2 tryout sets, the actual keys that work the cars have 5 depths, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. But the tryout keys are cut to 1.5, 3, and 4.5, which they call their high cut, medium cut, and low cut. So the highest cuts would look something like this. The next cut down would be the medium, and then the next cut down would be the low. This would be another medium cut, and then a high cut. So this would actually be cut at 1.5, 3, 4.5. So what we need to do is when we get a working key is we need to convert it and make the actual correct cuts on the key. We really shouldn't give the customer a key that has half cuts on it. We need to put the correct cuts on it. Now this is the key, the top part of this key, this side up here, is the key that worked the lock for the door. This key has no medium cuts on it. It's got low, low, high, low, high. So that's it's kind of unfortunate. We prefer to have some 3 cuts because the 3 cuts, the medium cuts, are normally the correct cuts. So here I have to figure out all 5 cuts. Now if I look at the other side of the key, this is the wrong side. It's not what we're working with, but I want to show for an example. Here you can see high cut, medium cut, low cut. The medium cuts, which are number 3 cuts, those are okay. And it's nice if you get a key that has a couple of 3 cuts on it because those are the actual cuts. You don't have to wonder if it's a 2 or a 4, it's a 3. These 2 cuts here, we would have to wonder about. But back on our key, all we have are low cuts and high cuts. So we don't know if these are 4s or 5s on these 3 cuts, and we don't know if these are 1s or 2s on these 2 cuts. So what we should do then is cut a key, and we're going to cut 4s here and 1s here. So we're going to go 4, 4, 1, 4, 1, and see if we get impression marks. And then if we get impression marks, we know we have to lower those down, the 4s to 5s and the 1s to 2s. Okay, so I'm going to cut a key like that, and then I'll bring it back and show you the results of that. Okay, hopefully we can see on the video a mark here on cut number 3 and a mark here on cut number 2. Now just to be careful, I would just take down one at a time. The number 3 cut, the mark is the strongest there, so I'm going to cut that down to a 2. It's a 1 now. We're going to cut it to a 2, and let's try the key there and just see how that works before we cut any more. But we'll probably have to cut the number 2 down to a 5. Okay, so I made this one cut, the number 3 cut, down to a 2, and the key works better. It works pretty good, but it still doesn't feel quite right. So I'm going to go ahead and cut this spot down to a 5. So we're going to try that at 4, 5, 2, 4, 1, and we'll see what that does. Okay, this key, when I cut the number 2 cut to a 5, I got a 4, 5, 2, 4, 1. The key works perfect. And so we made the door key, and then the ignition key is exactly the same. So I'm not going to spend any more video time on showing this. It's the exact same process for the ignition. The only difference is, as I said before, that on the ignition the pins are down. And so when you put the key in, you have to remember that to put it in so the cuts are down when you're making your key. Please take just a moment to like the video and also subscribe to our channel. Thanks for watching.